Hello and welcome to Williams Mullen's Trending Now, an IP podcast, a legal podcast focused on providing innovative companies and investors with important and timely information concerning intangible assets such as patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. I'm your host, Clint Brannon, and today I'll be joined by my colleague Tom Bergert, a partner in our intellectual property practice group here at Williams Mullen, to discuss patent searching. How are you doing today, Tom?
Doing very well, Clint. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, Tom, what is a patentability search?
A patentability search is one of many types of searches that are available to those that are interested in learning more about what patents might be relevant to their new product, their business, or their competitors. A patentability search in general is designed to learn whether an invention that you have is actually patentable. There are standards to meet in order to obtain a patent, and one is that it has to be novel, it has to be new. And another standard that the invention has to meet is it has to be non-obvious over prior art. And prior art can be past publications, it can be past patents, past patent publications, anything available to the public in general that might be used to show that the invention is not novel or is obvious and should not therefore be granted a patent. A patentability search, usually it's something that takes maybe a week or so. It could take 2 weeks depending upon how complex the invention is, but generally it's less expensive than actually filing a patent application. So many interested inventors and companies that are looking to file a patent application will do a preliminary patentability search to learn whether it's worth filing the application.
Is a patentability search something that I am required to do before filing a patent?
You are not. You can file an application without doing any kind of searching. A lot of things come into play when making that decision. It can be something where the cost is one that you wish to avoid, or the timing, you just don't have the time. You need to meet a filing deadline, so you want to file an application as soon as possible. It can also be something that you do alongside filing an application. You might file, let's say, a provisional application to have sort of a foot in the door, if you will, with your filing while also doing a patentability search.
And when do you recommend using one?
That's actually something it's almost hard to say there's a hard and fast rule over when you should do a patentability search. If there's time available and the applicant is very cost sensitive and wishes to know if I find something right away, then I'm abandoning my effort. I do not want to go through the expense of filing a patent application. Therefore, I'm willing to invest a little bit to learn whether there's something that's clearly on point that would tell me that I should not be filing a patent application. So in certain instances, it's easy to advise, well, why don't we do the patentability search and see what comes up? In some instances, again, with timing, for example, you may need to file, so there's no time to do a patentability search. But you can also inform your patent application by doing the search. Let's say you discover 9 references and maybe 6 of them are not completely, but mostly irrelevant, not really after what you're trying to claim, and 2 or 3 are, but they're not directly on point. You might look at those 2 or 3 references and say, oh, well, that's something that I need to distinguish from. I need to do a better job in my application than I otherwise would have because now I know about this. And so when you think about the big scheme of things, and you've got your patent application preparation, you have your patent application examination at the patent office. If I do more of my homework in advance when I file the application or before I file the application, it might save me some time or some effort or some expense downstream when the application is being examined.
Well, that sounds like those are all good things and things I would want to do. What are some of the downsides of getting a patentability search?
That's another good question. So you're learning about something that might be prior art, and so that could affect you. And in the U.S. Patent Office, there's a disclosure duty. If there's something that might be considered relevant to what you're trying to claim, you as the applicant and your patent professional, if you're working with a patent attorney, have the duty to disclose to the U.S. Patent Office anything that might be material to patentability. So you will learn things that may be material to the patentability of your invention. You then need to disclose that to the Patent Office for examination. There's obviously the cost. That's another factor. The cost of a patentability search, which is less expensive than other forms of patent searching. It can range. Again, you might have multiple inventive concepts in your application, or you might have a very simple invention. I don't want to say simple because no inventions are really simple, but less complex. that type of patentability search might be less than $1,000, but the cost can go up from there. It really depends upon the invention. So cost is an issue, the need to submit prior art, and then you may also miss something in your patentability search that you might get by either in a more exhaustive search, or the examiner may find something that you didn't turn up in your patentability search. So that's a potential downside. And another thing could be you may learn something that you really don't want to know. It might be something that may not necessarily preclude your patentability for your idea, but it may potentially be an earlier patent that is more foundational to the effort that you're seeking to improve upon, and therefore it might be something that maybe you could run afoul of, and that's something to keep in mind too.
What is the actual deliverable of a patentability search? What does that look like?
Generally speaking, it's going to be a listing of patent references that have been requested. So you might request patentability, a search for U.S. patentability. You might request a search of all records of international patent applications, including the U.S. But you will get a list of the references that were found by the searcher. Most of the time we use an outside vendor. Most people do. There are many vendors that provide these searches. So you'll have a list and you'll get copies of all the references. It won't always be patent references exclusively. It might be publications that could be relevant. It could even be web posts, things that might be a one-page piece of information that could lead you to explore more information relevant to that post. So typically you'll get a list and copies of the references.
Thank you, Tom. That's very helpful. And that really sounds a lot like the results we get back from freedom to operate searches or clearance searches, which are also a type of patent search that we do. That's very interesting.
And thanks for raising that, Clint, because there are several different types of searches related to patents, and I know we've got experience with a number of them. And today on this podcast, we're talking about patentability and freedom to operate or clearance types of searches. In your experience, is it easy to characterize what a freedom to operate search is, or how would you describe that?
Well, in general, when a company is looking at introducing a new product, and if it's in an industry where there tends to be a lot of patent filings and patent issuances, and there are many competitors, it's fairly common to do a freedom to operate or clearance search to try to minimize the risk of the new product running afoul of someone else's patent. And the results you get back are fairly similar to what you've described with the patentability search, but instead you're taking your prototype product, doing some studies of it, figuring out what the key features of it are that are new, and checking to see if anyone else has patents that might implicate those new designs.
And that's, in my experience, and I hope yours too, it seems to be a more complex type of search and probably leads to higher costs. But why would that be?
Yes, the cost and timing are a little bit different, I think. And one reason is that you first have to quantify what aspects of the product you are going to do a clearance of. And that in and of itself can be a little tricky. So you have to make sure you're identifying parts of the product where there may be patents out there that you need to be aware of. And there's no, when you do a patentability search, you're looking at a clearly defined invention and a clearly defined set of claims. And so you can target your search fairly narrowly. Whereas with a patent, and you're date limited as well. When you're doing a patentability search, you have to explore a broader array of patents, look into different technologies, because many products incorporate mechanical aspects, chemical aspects, electrical aspects, and all of those things can come into play. So depending on how you define the scope of your freedom to operate search, it can be more expansive.
And the freedom to operate is also looking at the claims of the patents, right? So they have to see, do the claims potentially be something that's relevant for the reviewer to see as far as the new product that they're looking to launch? Yes,
that's correct. So what you're always concerned about with clearing your products is not whether what you're doing is described in someone else's patent, but whether the claims of their patent encompass what you are doing, because that's when you can run into potential infringement issues.
Okay, so I've got a new product. I haven't launched it yet. I'm about to do so. It's going to make trillions. I know it. And I want to know, am I going to get in trouble before I launch this new product? I'm willing to invest some time, some money. What am I looking at in terms of what should I do with the results of the search once I have those back?
Well, there are a few options. At the outset, you want to first probably look at competitors that you know make similar products if you're going to do a clearance. And so you'll get back some of their patents. And depending on the industry, many companies constantly monitor competitive patents anyway, so there's no need to do an additional freedom to operate search. And then you also need to do a broader search that maybe finds patents that you don't know about that may implicate your product from companies that are new, or that maybe you're kind of getting into a new market segment or a new industry that you're less familiar with. So you need to potentially look at those kinds of patents as well.
Is there any ancillary benefit? Let's say I do this freedom to operate search, the results come back, I feel really good about it. My patent attorney says, you're clear, you are going to make trillions of dollars. Not that they would ever say that, but what else can I get as a benefit of doing that type of search?
Well, one of the benefits is that if you do identify a problem early in the development cycle of your product, you can potentially design around any patents that you identify. So if you do the freedom to operate search fairly early in the design cycle, when there's still time to make changes to the product, that can avoid costs down the road, either in licensing or infringement claims. So that's one of the primary reasons to build this in fairly early in your product development cycle.
Could it actually inform my own patenting efforts? If I get the results back and it looks fairly clear, might that be an incentive for me?
Yes, if you don't get much back in a particular field, that is an indication that this is not a very crowded art in terms of patents. And what that likely means is that if you file your own patents on the product, you can get very broad coverage, and you will have a very good chance of keeping competitors out of that niche.
And as an alternative, as we look to wrap this up, what if I do not do the search? What are the risks to me?
Well, there are varying degrees of risks, but the biggest one is that you launch your product, a year later, someone comes to you and says, hey, you're infringing our patent. And one of the things we have to keep in mind is that you don't have to know about a patent to infringe it. You don't have to copy anything. You don't have to intentionally commit a bad act. You can infringe a patent unknowingly. And so from that perspective, kind of burying your head in the sand is not going to save you from an infringement claim. And that's kind of the worst case scenario, is you invest all this time and effort in developing a new product, you don't do a freedom to operate study, and you find out that you're infringing someone's patent and have to either stop using the product altogether, or you have to pay them license fees or get involved in litigation, all of which are expensive, potentially expensive propositions.
Right. So as with any of these searches, we always recommend talking with competent patent counsel. Any takeaways that you would provide as far as the listener might be thinking in terms of patentability searches and freedom to operate searches?
I think they are related, and in the sense that you get some of the same information about the industry and kind of what's out there in the patent landscape, and that can be helpful both in building up your patent portfolio and also in kind of steering your product design such that they avoid the IP that's out there. So I think they're two sides to the same coin. They serve different purposes, but you can sometimes have spillover benefits from a patentability search helping you in your product clearance side, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I would just add one more comment on that, is that whenever you do any type of searching, you're not going to discover unpublished applications. So if something has been filed within the last 18 months or prior to publication and you've done a search, you won't know about it. And so it may be good to monitor over time or periodically recheck depending upon where you are in your product development.
That's a very good point, Tom. And different companies take different approaches to ongoing clearance, and they'll constantly monitor competitors' patents. Others do it every 6 months, every year, and just make sure that the patent landscape hasn't changed and perhaps has an impact on their existing products.
Thanks for the discussion.
Thank you, Tom. Well, that'll wrap up our discussion about patent searching. I'd like to thank Tom Bergert for joining me on Trending Now, an IP podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, please contact us. You can also visit our intellectual property practice page at williamsmullen.com/IP. There you can find out more about our team, as well as past episodes of this podcast and legal alerts. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when our next episode posts. Thanks for listening. Until next time.